Hey, it's me, Bobbert, and today I'm reviewing the classic Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo Entertainment System. This game is 35 years old and it's one of the very first games I ever played. Is this game still worth playing, or should you stick to the newer Mario Bros. Games? Let's find out. Mario made his debut in the Donkey Kong arcade game known as Jumpman. Long story short, the game was pretty popular and spawned a few sequels like Donkey Kong Jr., which was Jumpman was the bad guy, and Donkey Kong 3, which has no Jumpman but his cousin Stanley. There's also the Mario Bros. Game that came out in 1983, which is another arcade game. So, what made Nintendo go from an arcade game to a side-scrolling platformer? Well, the two lead developers, Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, yeah, I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that name, but they just finished Excite Bike and Devil's World, and they wanted to combine the side-scrolling of Excite Bike and the large sprite of Devil World. So from that, they began to make a game that stars Mario going level to level, traveling from different areas, and while that was happening, they were also working on the Legend of Zelda at the same time, so they were pretty much making two iconic games at the same time. There is one interesting beta I found on the Mario Wiki, and that was the original Super Mario Bros. Was going to have an airplane section, but it was cut out. But it was brought back in Super Mario Land for the Game Boy. Mario was also going to have a weapon, like a gun or even riding a dinosaur, which became Yoshi in Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. There's a bit more, but I'll discuss about that a little bit later on in the actual review. The version of Super Mario Bros. I'm playing is on the Nintendo Switch on Nintendo Online. They play pretty much the same, except that it has save states and a rewind feature. And I will admit, I use that rewind thing a bit, either to show off something or to, well, correct a mistake to prevent a game over. The story of Super Mario Bros. Is going place to place to stop King Koopa and rescue the Princess Toadstool, which is Princess Peach. The story is pretty short and simple, and what's also simple is the gameplay. You jump on enemies while gaining power-ups like mushrooms, fireflies, and power stars. Compared to today's game, it seems pretty basic, but this is pretty revolutionary because more games were more like an arcade game with no actual ending. This one has a basic story and has an end goal. For a game that is 35 years old, it still holds up pretty well. Granted, the gameplay is basic and they reduce graphic settings and enemies as well, but the game is still really fun to speed through, and throughout my playthrough, I'm impressed of how the games keep adding new stuff in each level. Granted, mostly it's just adding new enemies like bullet bills, spinies, and Lakitus. There's also underwater levels that you can swim around enemies mostly, unless you get the Firefly power out, which you can defeat them that way. Mario swimming can feel a bit heavy, so be careful when you're at the bottom and don't sink. And speaking of heavy, Mario's jumping in regular levels feels a bit different compared to the newer Mario games, or 2D Mario games to be specific. When running, it's no problem, but when you slow down or come to a complete stop, jumping can feel a little bit off, like it's easy to mistime your jump, or if you have second thoughts and you want to turn around, you can barely get back, sometimes even die because of it. Again, that may be just me, but I'm just used to the newer Mario games mechanics at this point. The game has no save data, but there are warp zones in some areas that send you into the next world, but it's a short game, so having no save data is not really that big of a deal. Of course, I'm talking about the original NES version. And the graphics is really nice and colorful, which most games usually have one color background, usually black. But I don't think Super Mario Bros. Was the first game to have different color backgrounds. All the music in the game are pretty iconic. Granted, there's only four, not counting short jingles or sound effects. There's, of course, the original World War One, which everybody knows. The underground theme is also pretty good. Underwater theme is probably the least popular one, but again, everybody knows it and it's easy to hum to that music. And the boss theme is okay in my opinion, but again, everybody still knows it. Every time I hear these songs, I'm thinking about this old video on either Newgrounds or Albano, excuse me. It's the Black Sheep website. I forgot the actual name for it, but the video is by Group X and it's called Mario Trends. It's a pretty funny video. Maybe I can find a video, some clips and put it on there. But every time I hear Mario music, I think of that video. It's just pretty funny. In every fourth level of each world, you fight Bowser. You beat him by either grabbing the axe at the end of the stage, or beat him with fireballs. The interesting thing about beating Bowser that way is that in Worlds 1 to 7, beating Bowser will reveal a different standard enemy when dead, implying that they're imposters. You may have noticed that Mario's outfit is different. It's not the original blue shirt and red overalls in the Donkey Kong arcade game, or the red shirt blue overalls in his future game. I guess green and red would be easier to see Mario in a game with backgrounds that are mostly blue and black. Bowser mostly stayed the same, but originally he was going to be an ox during development, and Peach has brown hair in this game, but now it's a blonde, and I don't know why. My only guess is it was to match Pauline, which is the original damsel in distress in the Donkey Kong arcade game, or it's because of the NES couldn't handle, I guess, blonde hair, or wouldn't look right. Princess Peach didn't become a blonde until Super Mario World, and there's like some other Mario game that I don't know about where Peach does have blonde hair in the NES. She pretty much her brown hair in this game, Mario Bros. 2 and Mario Bros. 3. I had a lot of great memories playing this game when I was a kid. It's a simple game to pick up, but I wasn't really too good at it. I got as far as World 6 with some help and warp zones. My favorite part of the game is the night level, just on the visual alone. It looks so cool back then on my old TV screen. It's also how I discover enemy patterns. Like in the underwater level, there's bloopers that moves up and down all around. At least the first time when I encounter it, but now I know how to avoid them. Just pretty much stay on the ground or as low as possible. Wait till he moves back and forth a little bit, and once he moves right past you, you make your little escape. At least that's the way I do it. But there's also easier way to avoid them, I'm pretty sure. But speaking of enemies, Hammerbursts on the other hand are the most annoying enemy in the game. That's pretty much the pattern I still can't figure out. I'm sure there is a pattern, but I still find it better just to run and jump over them and hopefully exploit a glitch that makes me run past their hammers. It happens sometimes, but most of the time I still get hit. This is one of the first games I ever played as a kid, and although I didn't consider myself a gamer back then, it's definitely a nice introduction to gaming in general, and it's definitely a game that we stick so close to my heart. For a game that's 35 years old, I still think Super Mario Bros. For the NES is still a good game. It has aged in some area, like the game length and controls, but for the most part, it's still easy to pick up, and I still recommend people to play it just to give it a try. Is it the best Mario game to be introduced, currently? No, there's better games old and new, like Super Mario Brothers 3, Super Mario World, and even some of the newer Mario games like Super Mario Bros. Wii are better introductions and a great way to introduce somebody to the franchise. But I still think gamers old and new should still play this game. Try to understand why this game was so revolutionary back then. And I still think it's pretty enjoyable, especially if you want a game that is short but sweet. Oh man, the aftermath of Super Mario Brothers. There's a lot to talk about, but since I'm planning to talk about the other Mario games in the future, I'm going to try to keep this part short. Super Mario Brothers is pretty much the best-selling Mario Bros. Game currently, with over 40 million copies. It was one of the best Nintendo selling games, but that's been beat out by Wii Sports by quite a bit. Of course, this helps Mario become a more iconic character. He was pretty much iconic when the original Donkey Kong in the arcade came out, but this one pretty much made him the mascot of Nintendo, spawning, tons of sequels, not only in side scrolls, but 3D platformers, sports, RPGs, you name it. Mario's been in almost every genre. To try to keep this as short as possible, this game made Mario, pretty much an icon not only for Nintendo, but in video games in general. Well, that's the end of the review. Sorry for this video being short, but I just want to get this out real quick. And the game was pretty short as well. But I hope you enjoyed the video regardless. Please subscribe if you want to see more entertainment. Sorry if I'm taking a long time to get videos up. I've been pretty busy with this whole epidemic thing. But I try to get the next review out as quick as possible. This is me, Bobbert, and I catch you guys later.